The idea of the musical was brought to us by our collaborator and friend Frank Galati. We first met Frank on the original production of Ragtime, and Lynn and I were selected to write the score. We were collaborating with the great playwright Terrence McNally, who would go on to write 2 more shows. We wrote 3 shows with him. And the interesting thing about Frank is he he's a real man of letters and a real man of literature. His big interest was adapting works of great literature, American literature, to the stage. And he taught this for many years, I believe 27 years at Northwestern University. And the various things that he did were sort of his crown jewel was The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, which he adapted. He presented it in Chicago. It came to Broadway, which he also directed that same year. He also won the Tony Award as both the playwright of the piece and the director of the piece. So he came home with one in each hand. And it's currently playing in London at the National Theater in a really exciting new production with Cherry Jones as Ma Jode. So that was his interest. He was very, very, very interested in literature. And when we first were working with him on Ragtime, that's why we thought of him. He had never at that point written or directed, rather, an original American musical. He had directed opera, he had adapted theater, he directed plays. But the idea that a song that didn't exist on Monday morning could pop up by Monday night, he thought we were hiding in our pocket. These extra tunes that we just carry with us, just bring them up. But anyhow, Frank was in love with this particular novel, The Death of the Family. He thought it could be very theatrical. He had adapted his version, which he was calling Knoxville 1915, and he brought it to Lynn and myself, and he felt that there was something missing. He said, "I think what it might be missing is music." He said, "Can you just read this play and let us know if you hear music in it?" And you may know that the first adaptation theatrically of the piece was All the Way Home, which was 3 acts and 2 intermissions. Frank presented us with 2 acts and 1 intermission. And what we performed last night is 1 act and no intermission. So we just kept sculpting the piece down to its essence. And Lynn and I were reading the play and also reading the AG novel. And I think I was fumbling at first because I thought, where's the music? There's scenes about, do you want 2 pancakes or 3? They were like very kind of mundane. And what we began to realize is that the music was about what people weren't talking about. It was about what they were thinking. They're not necessarily expressing. So there's a scene at a kitchen table, and they're talking about many different things, but they're not talking about really what's going on in their lives and in their souls right underneath that. So in a strange way, realizing bit by bit that it was actually about subtext, and that's where the music lied. The further we got into it, Frank suggested one day there was a character called the author. And so he brought the character of the author, James A.G., as a character in the musical. And that really opened up the floodgates because we had the author as an adult trying to write about himself as a young child. And there was something about having those 2 aspects of one character that really musically opened it up for me. And there are also a lot of small scenes, with 2 characters, 3 characters. And I thought, well, this is about a community. And what is the community? What are all these actors doing? Don't we have these 2 character scenes? They can't be like hanging out playing cards in the wings. We have to somehow keep them involved. And so the idea that the actors would support one another in their scenes, whether it would be playing musical instruments, many of our actors play musical instruments throughout the evening, a variety of instruments, or they would become the orchestration, where they're like literally becoming the string section vocally. And so the idea that this group of, I believe, 14 people would always be on stage, they would always be performing, they would be supporting, as we do in a community, supporting, the main person. It's on the center of the stage, but they are contributing as the community. And the idea of the actor musicians, I didn't know if that was something that would work. And Frank, at our first reading, he said, you should try it. And, we'll know soon enough if that's a good idea or not a good idea. And we tried it, and we in fact wanted to bring more of it into the piece. So it was really inspired for me about the idea of community, the idea of group singing, the idea of playing, supporting one another. And I kept thinking of the old Walt Whitman line of "I hear America singing," and I thought that's what this show should sound like. It should sound like America. It can be very specific, but it should have this larger aspect to it. And so, working with our orchestrator, coming up with the sound of it, with the orchestration, with all these lovely acoustic folk instruments that these people would probably play on their porches and entertain one another. That was a big part of the sound we were going for, that we developed. And we had the great fortune to develop it as a reading, then a workshop, then a production that almost happened. Then there was a pandemic, and then we got to do the production, and then we got to do rewrites. And so the score was developing, was changing. There were quite a few new things in this production that we hadn't seen in front of an audience until last night. So that was great. So that's how the music came to the piece.
Thank you. That's so exciting. And, Lynn, I want to connect to you because you, as the lyricists, are interacting. You all are such a formidable team. You've written so many fantastic shows together, in addition to Once on This Island, Seussical, and Dusty Rose. And I wonder if you could speak to some of what drew you through Frank, that sort of common thread, I think, to the project, and what specifically it was like for you as a lyricist adapting James Agee's words along with Steve.
Well, James Agee is at the core of the show. And the reason for that is that as a lyricist, what draws me to a project is beautiful language that I feel is so beautiful that it can start to sing. And you open up Death in the Family and you look on any page in that book, and I suggest after you see our show, go home and open the book and you'll see the places that inspired songs. And the first page, I opened it up and it was like, this can sing. The moment when Jay, the husband, is going out into the night because he's gotten called that his father may be dying, and he goes out at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning into the darkness. That scene is in the book, and it is the most beautiful scene I have ever read. And I write, that is musical. And as you learn to write lyrics, and as you learn to write theater, you begin to find the things that attract you as a writer. Beautiful language, poetic language, passionate characters, withheld characters for me are really interesting to write because, they need somebody to talk to, but sometimes it's not another person, sometimes it's an imaginary sidekick. In the case of James Agee's mother in the show, it's God. She prays. She's a very religious woman. Those are the kinds of characters that the book is filled with. And a little boy who doesn't know which end is up at this moment in time. He's so innocent, and innocent as children were innocent at the turn of the century, where they didn't know anything. And that to me is so much fun to write. Such a beautiful little character. So when Frank came to us with this piece and said, is there music in it? You have to. We tend to imitate Frank a lot because he's kind of the man. I'm 5'2", but he's sort of like this, and his eyes are open. He'd clap his hands, right? He'd cry all the time, and he was so fabulous. And when somebody like that offers you a gift, you just take and say, "Yeah, there's music in it. We're going to do this." I hadn't read the book, and I said, "We're going to do this because it's Frank." So, I think that's where I'm at as a lyricist. It's a strange career that for me has wended its way through many different forms of writing, from jingles to children's television to theater, and but always pushing words around at my computer or on a piece of paper, just making them click, making them beautiful, making them it's like flower arranging or something. Whatever we like to do that makes beauty. That for me is those lyrics. And as I said, Stephen and I met so many years ago in a songwriting workshop. But we just sort of knew that our styles and our sensibilities were very similar. And so here we are, and we're getting to do a show for you guys. I just wanted to add one quick thing, and then I will turn it over to Josh. But the one quick thing is I told you how, this is a musical written by somebody born in Knoxville, and, about Knoxville itself, a family in Knoxville, et cetera, et cetera. There are so many of those kinds of synchronicities, and an interesting one when you see the show is our leading actor is a brilliant actor named Jason Daniel, and he's playing the role of the author, who is James Agee, and he is looking back at himself throughout the show as a little boy. Well, Jason happens to have a house in a little town in upstate New York called Hillsdale, New York, and James Agee's buried there. And Jason would jog past James Agee's driveway. Correct. And I have a house up in that area too, so we know his house, we know where he's buried, he's in the woods. It's really so many circular connections, including the Roy Cochran Foundation, who is based here in Knoxville, and Roy is a resident of Knoxville. Roy was a student of Frank Galati's at Western University. Okay.